Hey guys, Ricky here. I want to say thanks for tuning in. I'm working today on a Fender Hot Rod Deluxe. This is one that a regular customer of mine picked up really cheap, knowing that it's got some problems. You plug it in, you power it on, and you start playing, and the volume gets really low and it gets really nasty, distorted. So we're going to take a look, see what's going on in there. First thing, this is a 2002 circuit board. I'm going to have to do a little homework myself because I know there are some things specific to that 2002 circuit board. Things I'm seeing just looking through some of these resistors, these brown spots around the resistors, some more there on our big power resistors, some more around a couple of our diodes here. It's pretty normal for these amps. They have some heat issues with those components. We can take care of that. Gonna replace the filter caps in it. These IC caps are garbage. I've dealt with brand new amps out of the box where those parts will be bad. Tubes look okay. Everything's in one piece. I'm noticing the bias here. Somebody's got this all the way down. It's biased all the way down there. So we'll figure out what's going on with that. All right, I'm gonna get this thing apart and we'll get going on it. I'll catch up with you guys soon. All right, guys, I'm back inside our hot rod, and first off, I did some looking into this 2002 circuit board. The big thing is these jacks, I guess, are a little more finicky to remove and replace. And some of the other components, some of the resistors, like these half-watt resistors down here, this R4, 11, 16, and 17 are heavier duty parts. So if you have some of the other versions, you might want to look at replacing some of those, but these are okay in this version. And there's a couple resistors on the tube board as well that are also a little heavier in this version of the amp. We're going to do this in two phases. I'm going to just do some reliability fixes, take care of some of these burned spots on the circuit board. So what we're looking at is this resistor here, these two resistors, definitely these two diodes. We're going to do the big filter caps. We're going to check these other diodes, just make sure they're okay. If we do replace those, we'll use a little bit heavier duty diode than what they use from the factory. We're going to go through, we're going to check these other capacitors, see what's good, what's going to need changed. I'm going to replace a few parts I can't really get to right now, but on the tube board down here, so here's our filter caps. Got our 100 UF cap to replace that 47 UF. That one's an ARS. And some F&Ts. Got diodes ready to go. Some of these resistors for the tube board. We've got new Switchcraft input jacks that we'll put on there. Just got some little bit heavier duty resistors to replace replace some of this. And as we do, we're going to stand these off the board a little bit so they get some airflow around the new parts. Yeah, I'll go ahead and get that done, and we'll catch up with you guys in a bit. Okay, we've got most of our parts on the main board swapped out. Still have to do the jacks up here. But right now I'm looking at the tube board. I just want to show you what is on here. Now, since this is the 2002 model and it's got a little bit different quality of parts on it, so there's some of these resistors in here that you would normally want to look at. But on these ones, they use a little heavier parts, so those are fine. We are going to go ahead, just for reliability's sake, I'm going to replace R64, R65 with some heavier duty parts. We're going to replace these 3 diodes on this board while we're in here. Nothing necessarily bad here, just reliability upgrades. And since I'm here, I'm going to replace this 22 UF capacitor. That's all we'll be doing on this board. Everything else looks good. We'll get that done. We'll get the jacks changed. And we'll see what it does before we start doing any other mods. Alright, so real quick, here is our tube board. We've got these parts replaced. You can see I gave them a little bit of extra space around the circuit board so they can cool a little. It's ready to go back in. Everything on that board's done, so we won't have to take it apart when we're doing mods or anything. Catch up with you guys in a bit. Alright, we've got all of the reliability mods done. Got our new switchcraft jacks wired in. Got all these big capacitors changed. Changed this one capacitor in the tube board and this one here. Was this guy. Replace that. Otherwise, these other capacitors throughout the board all looked good. Just want to show you quick too. So here I've got the original 47 UF cap. If I put it on our tester here, 4900 PF. And that's not an error with the meter. I've got a brand new 100 UF F&T that I can put on here quick for you. Show you. So that one came up 4900 PF. $102 UF. So definitely a bad cap. Otherwise, we did the power resistors here. Did some of those resistors in the tube board I showed you earlier. Did these diodes. We changed these to 1N4007. A little heavier duty than the factory part. Changed out these diodes. If you ever get problems with your channel switching, like just switching channels on its own, stuff like that, it's probably these. There it is. We'll go ahead and wrap this up, and then we'll look at some other mods for this. All right, let's take a quick look at some of the mods we're going to do in this thing. So first off, we're going to just do some of the standard tone stack mods. Replace a few of these parts. Just some stuff to kind of shift where the tone controls work at. Optimize that a little bit. We're going to play with this resistor down here. Basically, going smaller on that resistor will increase the gain on your mids. The stock part is 130K. So you can play with that. Or you could replace that pot with a push-pull to switch between like some different values, stuff like that. You could do, we've got some little capacitors. Those are 100 PF that we're going to put across our volume and drive pots. Kind of get tune the top end a little bit. Then a little bit bigger mod. We're gonna do the Frommel master volume mod on this, and that's gonna involve taking, I believe, this pot out, moving it to right here, getting rid of this pot, and then putting this 100K audio pot in this one's place. And then there's a number of resistors, capacitors, I believe this relay, transistor, some stuff up in here that'll get removed. A bunch of jumpers will go in place. A couple parts get replaced. We're going to go ahead, though, and do the tone stack mods first. And then we'll tackle that master volume mod separate. And we'll put those capacitors on the volume and drive pots when we do that. All right. We've got our tone stack parts done. We've got that resistor changed. We went down to 100K on that part. Another little mod we did is just removing R30, that resistor, and that'll just help your reverb sound out a little bit. And then if we look at the other side of our board, at the mid-range control, we just put a little jumper across those two lugs. That's another part of that tone stack mod. And that's that. There's the parts we took out. Next step is going to be to start taking things apart for this master volume mod. Here we go. All right, I want to show you guys real quick. I've got all the parts out for our master volume mod. Just want to show you the scope of this one. So there's 5 capacitors, like 8 resistors. Got a relay, a transistor, a couple pots. This coax cable off the board. So quite a few things you'll have to pull if you get into this mod. I'll get it. I think what goes back in is, okay, so all of this goes away. This pot, this was the volume pot. That'll get relocated to the master volume. Then we've got our new pot to go in our volume spot. Then it's just a single resistor and a capacitor, I believe, that go back. And then a bunch of jumpers go on the board. So I'll go ahead and get that done and show you what it looks like. Okay, we've got the master volume mod done. We've got our pots moved around, this one and this one. And when I did that, I went ahead and mounted these two little capacitors here. That's that treble brightness mod on those two pots. All those parts removed, and then we got some jumpers down there, and then our two yellow jumpers here, and that's it. That should be everything we're doing in this amp. Here's all the parts we took out. Check this out. So we've got a bunch of capacitors, transistor, that relay, a ton of resistors, those big caps, the input jacks, that pot, whole bunch of parts involved in these mods. We'll get this put back together and show you what it sounds like. All right, real quick, we've got our hot rod all together. See everything we've done. I've got my test leads. I got one on the ground here and one on our bias test point. And if you remember when I first took this apart, that bias pot was turned all the way down. And I've got this set now to like 66, 67, 60 to 70 is kind of the range. So we're gonna see what this does. Alright guys, I got just one or two more things for you here before we play test it and show you what this thing sounds like. First thing is I did end up changing this R12 again. I was playing it a little bit, had everything done, playing it. I just didn't feel like the tone controls and the gain were, I just didn't think it was there yet. So I did some playing around, and the original part was 130K. I dropped it down to 100K. And now I've dropped it down to 56K. Much better. I think that really just made everything pop, everything come together. And my other thought is, if you're wanting to do these mods to your amp, you can get all these parts in a kits for most of this. If you want to do the reliability mods, that's going to be your all your big capacitors, all those diodes, these big resistors that were getting hot. If you go on eBay, you'll find an eBay seller, Gold Mine Treasure Collections, and they sell a kit that's going to come with all of those parts and instructions. And it's going to come with a few things for some tone mods. And the next one I would recommend would be the Frommel Electronics, their complete kit. So that's going to come with all the parts for the tone stack mods, the bright mods. It's going to come with the master volume mod. So really, if you get those two kits, you're going to have all the instructions and all the parts. You may have to source a few of the smaller capacitors if you need to change any of those. You might have to source some of those yourself. And depending on which version of the amp you have, you might have to source a few resistors yourself, but nothing too bad. All right, I'll get this buttoned up and we'll show you what it sounds like now.
Colin here with all the bits. Here to take a look at this lovely Fender Deluxe that we have modified to be a much better amp than it previously was. Playing this Fender Strat. It's a made in Mexico, probably late 90s, early 2000s, not exactly sure. Wound some Texas specials for it and put it in a mid-boost circuit. That's on that there. It's kind of a blacky type guitar tonally and slightly looks. Haven't gone through the whole aging process. We'll see if that happens down the road. If you want this pickguard, you can order it from us. We will build it for you. Check it out. Anyways, with this amp here, tweaked the high end so that it comes out better with both the clean and the drive channels. Master volume on both channels now instead of previously it was only on the drive channel. Now it's a true master volume amp. So it's controlling the volume of the entire amp instead of only on the drive channel. Tweaked the highs a little so they're more pleasing to the ear, not quite as brittle and sharp, but it's still a Fender, Reduced the boominess of the low end so it's cleaner, more what you would like it to sound like instead of the speaker farting qualities that these often are known for. And the mids have been tweaked so that it's a more usable adjustment range, as well as it sounds great at 5 to 8 instead of having to be cranked to 10 to 12. So now you can play around with the mid control actually, which is lovely. So gonna go ahead and play just some clean stuff on the neck and middle here. The mid boost circuit activated. Give you some of this nice bridge pickup tone. Drive. Kind of makes you realize why Eric Clapton started using Fender. Sounds great. Anyways, here's a little more drive here. Play some AC/DC for you. great sounding. Maintains a lot of clarity now. It's that low end really cleaned up, so now you can just strum distorted open chords. Sounds great. Anyways, really impressed with this amp mod. If you want it done to yours, hit us up on the
Facebook.
yes, on Facebook. All right, see ya.